Shalom again, everybody. Ariel Tzadok here from the KosherTorah School, found online at www.KosherTorah.com, bringing to you today's daily lesson in the Sefer Yetzirah. Today is lesson number 70, the gematria of Sod, secret. And we are dedicating these lessons, of course, to everybody around the world facing the trials, the tribulations of everything going on. Health and blessings, safety and prosperity are blessings to everybody. And remember, the power is in your hands. Whatever obstacles you face now, look for the opportunities within them. You will find them, and you will exploit them, and you will accomplish great things. That power is in your hands right now. Remember, we had the 7 opposites that we spoke about earlier in this chapter. Well, you don't always have to think about or embrace the negative, right? You can look at sickness. Look at health. You can look at death. No, look at life. Look at poverty. No, look at wealth. Always look to the positive. Flip things over. Hafuch ba v'hafuch ba. You have the power to do it. The techniques and the meditations that we teach in this class is specifically geared towards practical, realistic, and rational, I like that word, transformations in this world. That's what this is all about. Remember, no magic, no wiggling the nose, no snapping the fingers. And now, we are in the 4th chapter in the 7th Mishnah in our version from Hayim, and he's going to introduce to us the concept of what we call the 7 gates of the soul. And this is going to open up for us a very, very deep and profound set of teachings, right? Now, in this series, we're only going to touch the little itsy-bitsy part of it in this lesson. But you will find that I have entire courses that elaborate this on hours and hours and hours, because Rabbi Haim deals with these gates in a very profound psychological archetypal way. The 7 gates of the soul are male and female. What is male and female? Well, we're going to learn that the 7 gates are obviously going to be the 2 eyes, the 2 ears, the 2 nostrils, and the mouth. All right? 2, 4, 6, 7. The best of my knowledge, any mammalian vertebrate pretty much has, these 7. Human beings, male and female, also have these 7. So why do we even bother to distinguish? And here's where we get very important. Because ears and eyes and nose and mouth, Rabbi Haim, in his Otzrot Hayim, in the Etz Hayim, in his order of what we call in Hebrew the Seder HaHishtal Shalut. I have books on this, ebooks on this, video courses on this, audio courses on this. This is the foundation and the building blocks of Hayim Vital's entire system. He speaks of, in brief, the worlds of emanations coming from the unknown God, the Ein Sof, materializing in the kernel essential form called Adam Kadmon, still concealed like a seed. And then out of that coming the worlds which we call Atzilut, Biriya, Yetzirah, and Asiyah. And how Atzilut is the ultimate world of the Sefirot. And within all of these worlds, the first emanation to come out to be revealed comes from the ears. And only then from the nose. And only then in the mouth. And breath. And only then from the eyes, which look down. This is the secret of the ears, and the nose and the mouth is called the achaf. And the eyes are the anayim. And these are said to emanate from a place called the sag of Ak. That's all Hayim Vital language. Go to my Otzrot Hayim series. This is all discussed there in great detail. I'll put a link to it in the notes to this class here. Now, most Kabbalists today make a fundamental error with regards to understanding Hayim Vital. And this is widespread. It's rampant. It's cancerous. Yeah, I don't look at it in a good light. And what is this mistake? That the order of the worlds of which Hayim Vital speaks is somehow out there. And have turned Rabbi Haim Vital's intuitive psychic visions into a philosophical analytical pursuit. And this is fundamentally the opposite of everything that we're learning here. You know, this is where we need to understand, before we even talk about nose and mouth, we've got to talk about ears and eyes. There are different ways to learn, as we all know. For anyone who's ever read the Zohar, regardless of when the Zohar was written, whether it was by Moshe de Leon or Shimon Bar Yochai, whether it's historical or novellic, it doesn't matter. Its validity of profundity transcends all controversy. And many of the teachings in the Zohar are introduced with a simple Aramaic phrase called ta hazeh, come see. And then the Zohar elaborates a wonderful story, almost imaginative in nature, in which the only way you really grasp it is like to close your eyes, sit back and kind of imagine it and absorb it. That's come and see. It's an intuitive, psychic, pictorial experience. Years before, or after, depending on your point of view, along came the Gemara, the Talmud. And the Talmud isn't dealing with the spiritual. It's dealing with the practical, tangible things of this world. And most arguments in the Talmud are introduced with a different term called tashma. Come and listen. Listen, as we've learned, is the form of analytical communication of structure. Tahazeh, look at it maybe as the sefirot. Tashama, look at it as the letters. Tahazeh, sefirot, look at them as the eyes. Tashma, look at them as the letters. The sefirot, the letters. Tahazeh, tashama. You could say chokhmah bin, if you will. But the point is, there are different ways of how we learn. And in our Torah tradition, we have always addressed this with completely parallel structures of our learning. So, for example, many people, when you want to come and study the practices and rituals of Judaism, you want to observe Torah law in what we today call Orthodox Jewish fashion. Well, how do you do that? You go back to the original source material of that specific topic, the Mishnah, the Gemara, and you look at the rabbis who then are the commentators on that, called the Gaonim, and then later the Rishonim, later Achronim, and that creates an entire path, a masorah, like links in a chain, of how law, if you will, or practice is continued. Whereas in the, in quote, mystical tradition, it's very, very different. So here's an interesting thing to discuss, or to contemplate, I should say. I'm pretty sure historically that Moshe de Leon in the 1200s was the actual individual rabbi who put the Zohar together. Notice I didn't say it's the author. Did he create it and write it? Maybe. Or maybe he channeled it. Maybe it was completely novellic in nature, or maybe it was something deeper, more profound. Now, in prophecy, in the Bible, if you had a prophet, even from the days of Ezra, and he is channeling from God prophecy about the Torah, that is the same as the Torah of Moshe of Mount Sinai, regardless of the time of its historical reception. Because the Midrash states to us very clearly, all prophecy came from Sinai. All prophecy came when Moses brought it down. And then it was, if you will, divvied out throughout the generations. That is the profundity of understanding, which requires both an intellectual understanding and an intuitive understanding. So when we're talking about the gates of the body, we're also talking about what we call vessels, receptacles of light. Vessels, receptacles of light, of course, are ways and means of perception and understandings or levels of consciousness. So according to Rabbi Haim Vital, the dawn of consciousness began with the revelation of light from the kernel form called Adam Kadmon, from the internal workings of his mind called Ab and Sag, and out pops light out of his ears. What does that mean? Take the Otzrot Hayim course and find out. But what that, in quote, light of the ears is the first revelation of what? Intellect, mind, thought. For Rabbi Haim, that is the highest level of the revelation of the divine light. And then it materializes, comes down through an entire process through the nose. What is the light of the nose? Well, the light of the nose, obviously, is the sense of smell. And the sense of smell is said to correspond to Eret, which is the heart, which is the psychic or the intuitive. So the ears are the intellectual, rational, and the nose isn't the psychic intuitive like you would think, which is going to be materialized through the eyes and the forehead, but a lower level, kind of like the relationship. You had the keter, and then in the middle you had the dot, and then, of course, smell. Curious midrash that states when the Messiah comes, he will be able to judge people by smelling them. Innocent, guilty. Well, how do you do that? Well, there really are pheromones or whatever else that is actually out there molecularly, which do enter the nose, where it happens to all of us. But do you and I understand that? When we talk about psychic and spiritual energy, auras and the like, we think of light. And light we associate with, of course, like we do physically, the eyes and like the mind. You don't associate light with the sense of smell. But there are those who understand very well what I'm talking about. And you can smell something. We even use this in our vernacular talk. I smell something fishy. And you're not talking about the trout or the salmon you just bought. We're saying something's not right. Something smells not right, right? Because you get a sense, a flavor of something. And then, materializing down, the lights come out of the mouth. Rabbi Haim goes into a profound understanding of the lights of the mouth, how the lights of the right and left ear, which are separated, of course, by the head, how the lights of the nose, the nostrils, separated, of course, here, are all united in the mouth, what he calls the inner light and the outer light, and how they're both equal, how they both come in and out, and it's a process of how this led to the formation of the first of forms. And he calls all the lights that are bound within this individual singular first form the binding, or the akudim. Go look this up. Now, of course, Rabbi Haim is writing this Otzrot Hayim stuff, 1,000 years plus after the Sefer Yetzirah was ever written. So, barring any unusual circumstances, I would be safe to assume that the author of our Sefer Yetzirah absolutely had no idea about Rabbi Haim Vital or anything that he would say. But Rabbi Haim had the idea about the Sefer Yetzirah. And you see, when he gazed into the image of Adam Kadmon, he did not see an aggrandized human being. He didn't see worlds out there on the other side of the Hubble telescope. He understood and saw the source of worlds within our human anatomy. And the famous Baal Shem Tov also understood this. In the book Baal Shem Tov, Parshat Ve'et Hanan, I think it's in my version anyway, Ot Samach Tet, might be, I think that's it. There's a story told that the Baal Shem Tov saw a guy publicly teaching Kabbalah, and he says, "You shouldn't be teaching publicly." The guy was stunned. What do you mean? You teach publicly, why shouldn't I? And the Baal Shem Tov pretty much said, because when you teach people things, you look at things as if they're literal. He says, they're not. They're internal. And if you don't understand the internal nature of all of these worlds, then you will never understand their reality at all. And Chaim Vital got that. I think he understood this very well. Unlike so many of our later my peers, who again, they'll tell you, yes, there's this world and that world, and this one's connected to this one, like that and like that. And what does it all mean? They don't get. But okay, because they make the mistake of looking outside as opposed to looking in. So the 7 gates, these are the access points for consciousness. Remember, we correspond these 7 gates in our body, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, to levels and means and ways of consciousness. And we correlate these ways and means of consciousness to planets, to days of the week. What this all means is this, and this is something like the Kohelet says, there's a time and a purpose for all things under heaven. There are times when it's more conducive to be rational and intellectual. There are other times when it's more conducive to be intuitive and psychic. There are times when you can smell the true nature of things, and then there are times when it's proper to speak and times when it's proper to be quiet. A time and a purpose for all things under heaven. Now, as I showed you in our previous class, the correlations between these things differ radically from one school to the next. And many might think and say, well, just because there was confusions in the elaboration of the text and the passing down of its authentic form and blah, blah, blah. No. I don't think it was like that at all. I think many of the authors intentionally shifted things, not to deceive, not to lie, possibly not even to conceal, but rather, what did we say here? Oh, that's right. Zachar v'nekeva, male and female. So, am I saying that the Cordovero way is and the Hayim Vital way, one's male, one's female? No. I'm telling you, everything that we look at has a male and female perspective. Now, in case you haven't noticed, I am a male of the species. Maybe my beard gave it away, but today, in the crazy world we are, who knows if that means anything. But my point is this. When I want to talk about any topic under the sun, doesn't matter what it is, with my spouse, my wife, who is a woman, she has her own unique perspective pretty much to everything. I can bring up any topic whatsoever. It doesn't matter. I look at things one way. She looks at things in another way. Well, which one's right? I don't know which one's left. Wrong? We don't enter that word into the equation. This is how perception counts. And the 7 gates are the access points. So when we look to the eyes and to the ears and to the nose and the mouth, and we're going to correspond or correlate them to letters, which are paths of movement along the Sephirotic columns. So what corresponds to the letter Bet and moves between Chochmah and Hesed? What corresponds to the letter Gimel and moves between Bina and Gavura? Well, one way is going to see it like that, and the other way is going to see it the other way. And which way is right? Again, don't use that word wrong. Better say which way is left. And when you look at things, you will see both perspectives, male and female. Now, it's not just a distinction between men and women or male and female of the human species, but the differences of perspective between Tahazeh and Tashama. Listening and seeing. The lights that emanated from the eyes, we say, emanated far down below the heart. And because they were distant from the light of the ears, couldn't handle that light, and they shattered. And it was the source of the light of the eyes that came the shattering of the vessels, the fall of the primordial kings, who we say came from the world of Sag, which is female. So really we shouldn't refer to the fallen kings, but the fallen queens. And when the queen fell, then the Hey of the first letter of God's name fell to become the lower Hey, the last letter of God's name. And then the light of the forehead came out, the emanator, and that came to rectify. And that light of the forehead was above the nose and the source of it. And that became what's called the Ma, the source of Adam. And that became the rectifier. And how male and female, eyes and ears, perspective right, perspective left, all come about. So when we want to come and look at the 7 gates, just don't say, okay, you have 2 eyes, 2 ears, nostrils, mouth. Gotcha. Oh, no. You have no idea how deep dark the rabbit hole goes down. So I'm going to put a link to the Otzrot Hayim classes here. Go look at the course syllabus and you'll see all of these details. I have a book called Torah Kabbalah, an ebook where I write all of this down as well. I'll put a link to that as well. Check these things out. See them for yourselves. Learn, listen, and see. Ariel Tzadok, Kosher Torah School.